Good to have you with us this morning. The new, more contagious Omicron variant is now the dominant coronavirus strain in the United States. The CDC says Omicron now makes up 73% of all new COVID cases nationwide, overtaking the Delta strain, which has been spreading rapidly through the country for months. The CDC director says she saw this coming.
And that was, as you note, expected based on the growth rates of how quickly Omicron is transmitted across other countries and around the world. We anticipated that this number would be about this high at around this time.
New this morning, health officials in Texas are now confirming what's believed to be the first death from the Omicron variant, an unvaccinated patient. All this comes as President Biden plans to speak on the rapidly spreading Omicron variant later today, just days after coming into contact with someone in the White House who later tested positive for COVID. We have a team covering everything you need to know about the Omicron variant this morning, including the federal response and COVID's impact on the busy travel season. Let's begin with NBC News medical reporter Erica Edwards and NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli. So, Erica, what are you hearing from the CDC about Omicron's dominance in the U.S. right now?
Good morning, Joe. You know, even experts who study viruses all the time have been astonished at how quickly this variant has taken over. Now, that speed plus the variant's ability to break through, and in fact, even people who are fully vaccinated have health officials really concerned about the variant's potential. Now, last night, CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky also said that anyone who is eligible to get that booster shot should go ahead and get it. She once again urged anyone to go get the boosters. Here's what she had to say.
What we do know about the Omicron variant, it's got over 50 mutations. And because of those mutations, just being vaccinated with 2 doses may not be enough.
More than 61% of the U.S. population is considered fully vaccinated, but just under 30% has gotten that booster shot. Joe?
So, Mike, the president is expected to speak about this today. What can we expect to hear from President Biden on Omicron and this quick surge in cases?
Well, Joe, White House officials say that this is not a speech about locking down the country. So no new restrictions on a national level expected to be announced by the president today. But the president will offer a very stark warning about the fact that if you remain unvaccinated, you're heading into a winter in which you face a very strong risk of severe illness and potentially even death. So obviously the president will be encouraging Americans who have not yet been vaccinated or boosted to do just that. But the president will also be outlining several steps his administration is taking to try to deal with this winter surge. And it has to deal with 2 issues, testing and hospital capacity. The president's going to be announcing that FEMA actually will be deployed to help set up additional capacity for hospital sites. The president also announcing that there will be 20,000 new federal testing sites to open. The first will open up in New York City before Christmas. And then this issue of testing is so important. The president's going to be announcing that the federal government has purchased 500 million take-home tests that will be available to any American who wants to request one. They'll be sent by mail, and they can be requested as soon as this week. You'll remember, Joe, that the White House earlier had announced that any American who wanted to purchase those at-home tests would be able to get reimbursed by their insurance company starting in the new year. That is still going to be the case, but this will be offering Americans an opportunity to do those without any out-of-pocket costs.
And the need for those tests is great right now. So, Eric, I want to ask you about what's happening in Texas. Officials there now reporting what's believed to be the first Omicron death in the U.S. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this was a man in his 50s in the Houston area. Officials said he had not been vaccinated, although he previously had been infected with COVID-19. He also had some kind of underlying health condition, which put him at greater risk for complications of COVID-19 overall. Now, even though anecdotally it seems many Omicron cases have been mild, Joe, this is an unfortunate example that is not always the case.
And perhaps a reminder why vaccinations are so important. So, Mike, the White House says President Biden, who is vaccinated, came into contact with a staff member last week who then later tested positive for COVID. What are we learning about this case, and could it impact today's speech at all?
So what the White House is revealing now is that a mid-level staffer, as they're describing it, tested positive over the weekend after experiencing symptoms on Sunday, and that this individual had been in close contact with President Biden, actually flew with him on Air Force One from South Carolina to Philadelphia on Friday. The president, who undergoes regular testing himself, did receive an antigen test as part of that regular testing on Sunday, had a PCR test at the White House yesterday, has tested negative. The White House is saying, and Press Secretary Jen Psaki said in a statement last night, that because the federal rules are that if any individual who is vaccinated and boosted does not need to be quarantined, the president will go ahead with his schedule. But, Joe, somebody who covered the campaign, this White House, this campaign, had felt very proud that the president, then candidate Biden, made it through that campaign without facing a positive test himself. So serious concern about a potential outbreak here at the White House now.
All right. And Eric, I'm going to ask you to put on your sports reporting cap for just a second here as the White House lays out its plan to lessen the variant's impact. Omicron is leaving a major mark on the sports world, causing the NHL to actually pause its season entirely. What more can you tell us?
That's right. The National Hockey League will pause its season as of tomorrow and not return until Monday, December 27th. Now, as of last night, more than 15% of the league's players were in virus protocols. 11 teams had already suspended operations. Now, the postponement of so many games, plus the ongoing COVID-19 outbreaks, also means the league's participation in the Winter Olympics is also up in the air. Officials are meeting to discuss whether they should even allow the players to travel to Beijing in just a few short weeks. They should announce their decision in the coming days. Joe?
Winter Games coming quickly. All right, Erica, Mike, thanks for kicking us off this morning. As Omicron dominates nationwide, millions of people are still taking to the skies, traveling in record numbers this week. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber is at the nation's busiest airport, Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. So, Ellison, we're now 4 days out from Christmas. So what is it like there in Atlanta right now, and what could the next week look like for airports all around the country?
Yeah, it is busy. This is a busy airport any time of the year, especially during the holidays. Last year, of course, was an exception to that rule. But this year, this airport, Hartsfield-Jackson International, they're starting to see pre-pandemic travel levels. This holiday season, which they mark as December 20th to January 4th, officials at this airport say they expect about 3.7 million passengers. That's a lot, and this is not the only airport expecting to see these high travel numbers. Some of the travelers we've talked to here today, they've been surprised to see lines. Others say it's what they expected. A new COVID variant, though, most say that's not what they were expecting, and for some people, it is causing a little bit of nerves. Listen. Did you have any apprehensions about flying with the new Omicron variant in COVID news?
Yes, a lot. Only that we need a negative test the day before we come back, and just the timing of that, and hoping the resort offers it, and just some stress that way.
We wanted to be especially safe and careful, and we felt like we took all the precautions, and we felt confident that the airports were taking the precautions that we needed.
In general, AAA says travel this year is up by 34%. It's not quite pre-pandemic levels, but it is really close. AAA says they expect 109 people to travel 50 miles or more this holiday season. That's 92% of 2019 levels. Airlines alone, get this, they will see an increase of 184% compared to last year. Joe?
Ellison, let's talk about some other percentage increases. The average number of COVID cases is up 43% from Thanksgiving, the last time we were talking about a big travel period. So if people are traveling, what do health officials recommend they do?
Yet nothing is foolproof, but health officials say there are a number of steps that we can take to try and make our holiday travel a little bit safer amid a pandemic. The CDC says if you are not fully vaccinated, that you should delay travel until you are fully vaccinated. They also say you should check your destination's COVID situation. They also say do not travel if you know you were exposed to COVID-19. It seems obvious, but as we're seeing this new variant cause so much more spread, it's a good reminder if you think you were with someone who tested positive for COVID-19 or found out later, even if you feel fine, health officials say you should not travel. And then the other thing they say you can do is get tested before and after your trip. And of course, we talked to a lot of international travelers today who, even if they were fully vaccinated, they were doing that because they were traveling abroad. One woman we spoke to is from Jamaica, said it was a relatively easy process for her, and it sort of gave her an extra layer of comfort that they had that test before and then they were going to have it after, as well as they had to visit family. Joe.
All right, Ellison, some good advice. Thank you so much. And as you heard, their health officials are calling on really every American to get tested early and often to avoid spreading both the Omicron and Delta variants. But first, you got to find a test. And in some places, that is not easy right now. In New York City, many have reported standing in lines for hours to get a COVID test. And in Miami, several locations ran out of PCR tests. Many are resorting to buying at-home rapid tests, but those are also few and far between. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer takes a closer look at the testing challenges.
Following the advice from public health officials, Americans across the nation are testing the limits of testing centers.
I'm supposed to go home to Florida tomorrow, and a bunch of people are testing positive.
In states like New York, California, and Florida,
the testing just closed back down.
Sites are overwhelmed and out of stock.
Every 2-3 weeks, me and my wife get tested just in case.
Facing crushing demand, the mayor of New York City is calling on the president to invoke the Defense Production Act, requiring private companies to ramp up test production.
This whole country needs to go on a war footing to fight back. Having enough test kits when we need it, having enough treatment when we need it is key. And that's what we need the federal government's help with.
After at least 3 states began handing them out for no cost.
I get it for free. So I love it.
Tonight in several cities, at-home test kits are nearly impossible to find. Pharmacies confirming an unprecedented increase in demand while working to rapidly replenish supply just 5 days before Christmas, with many planning to see family.
We got to this situation because Omicron is exploding, and I think the surge of cases, we should have anticipated that and had reserves.
Our thanks to Miguel Almaguer for that report. Let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Uche Blackstock. So, doctor, let's pick it up right there and talk about the surge in testing demand. What do you think needs to be done to make sure everyone who wants one has access to a test?
Thank you so much for having me, Joe. So I agree that we should invoke the Defense Production Act. We need private manufacturers to get in there, all hands on deck, to start manufacturing these rapid at-home tests. We know that they are another layer of safety, and they help identify people who are not only infected, but who are infectious. So they're contagious, and they could actually transmit the virus to other people. And I think that's something that needs to happen right now. I don't think it can wait till January because we are essentially right now in a crisis within a crisis.
Especially with the holidays right now. Let's talk about that number from the top of the show. The Omicron variant already now makes up 73% of all new cases. Did you expect Omicron to spread this fast? And what does this tell us? What does it mean for the weeks to come?
You know, I think we did. We saw the signs from South Africa. We saw what was happening in Denmark and the UK. So we had adequate notice that this would happen. And as we see there, especially in the New York area, it's almost 93% of cases. And so we'll see within the next few weeks, it's probably another surge exponentially in more cases. And so that's why those rapid tests are even more important. I would say indoor masking is going to be crucial because we know that this particular variant is incredibly contagious. And so I encourage people to make sure you're using all the tools in the toolbox to keep yourself safe.
Dr. Blackstock, one of those tools is the booster. We're seeing more evidence the booster is necessary to fight Omicron. Does that mean, do you think, the definition of fully vaccinated is going to change? And if so, when do you think that might happen?
Absolutely, Joe. I think it has to change. I think Omicron has forced that inertia to change the name. I think 3 doses of the vaccine will be considered the primary series. I think that change will likely become imminent because we really need to encourage people to get boosted. Only 1 in 6 Americans is fully boosted. And with Omicron here, we really need to up those numbers as well as those efforts. So I anticipate a change, in the terminology of what fully vaccinated means, probably within the next few weeks to months.
Dr. Uche Blackstock, as always, thanks so much for your expertise. We appreciate it. In Minneapolis this morning, the jury in the trial of former police officer Kim Potter begins its second day of deliberations today. Both the prosecution and defense made their cases to the jury during closing arguments yesterday. Now a jury must decide if Potter is guilty of manslaughter in the killing of Daunte Wright. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joins us again from outside the Hennepin County Courthouse in Minneapolis. So Shaq, walk us through some of the biggest highlights from the closing arguments yesterday. What kind of messages did both the defense and prosecution have for the jury?
Well, you heard the prosecutor, Erin Eldridge, start with her closing argument saying that Daunte Wright would not be home at the Christmas table this holiday. And she said that was because of the actions of Kim Potter, which she claimed were reckless and showed negligence. The prosecution is saying that this is a 26-year veteran of the Brooklyn Center Police Department, and she should have known the difference between her gun and her taser, and her inability to do so cost the life of Daunte Wright, and that was criminal. The defense on the back end said that Daunte Wright was responsible essentially for his own death, that his attempt to flee from officers created the conditions for a mistake to be made, and they say that's what happened. It was a mistake by Kim Potter when she reached for her firearm instead of her taser. Listen to a little bit of the arguments from yesterday.
It's not just a tragedy. It's manslaughter. That she was an officer does not make it okay. That she was on duty does not make it okay. That she shot him with her service pistol does not make it okay.
That's what caused this whole incident. If he would have gone and with the officers, been handcuffed, go to the squad car, go take your ride downtown, and it's over.
You heard the defense attorney go on to say that even if Potter intended to use her firearm, because of the witnesses they brought up on the stand, including the former police chief of the police department, it would have been justified, they said. It didn't violate policy. Prosecution striking back saying that's simply not true and that the taser shouldn't have even been used in that instance. Joe?
Shaq, in terms of the jury, do we know how long deliberations lasted yesterday?
Deliberations lasted about 5 hours yesterday. This is a jury, by the way, that is fully sequestered during these deliberations. So they're not going home. They're staying at a hotel. But those deliberations extended to about 6 p.m. last night. We expect them to begin about 9 a.m. local time, so just in a couple of hours this morning. Joe?
And Shaq, we know the Brooklyn Center School District has started its winter break early in anticipation of a verdict in the trial as a precaution. What other precautions are officials making to try and keep the Twin Cities area safe?
Well, you mentioned there is that precaution that was done by the school district where they rolled back their winter break, so the schools are not in session right now. And they directly said in their statement that was released a couple of weeks ago, they said that the reason why they were doing that was because of the Potter trial. But, you know, one thing to note is that we were here during the Chauvin trial. This is when this shooting actually happened, and where the courthouse then was barricaded with barbed wire and you had military vehicles. You don't have that same presence there. There is heightened security that the court has. There is you hear local leaders talking about them being on guard, ready for any response. But it's a much lower tension than it was for previous trials. That does not ignore the fact or eliminate the fact that so many people say they are watching and so many people say they are engaged and waiting for this verdict to come from the jury, Joe.
And Shaq, I should ask you, we have a couple major trials right now where we're waiting for the jury results. Christmas Eve is Friday, Christmas is Saturday. What is the schedule moving forward? If they don't get a verdict by a certain day, do they pause for the holiday?
Yeah, you know, the announced schedule is that by Thursday, or when is Christmas Eve? On Friday. By Friday, if court is not wrapped up by Friday, then it'll be a pause, and then they'll resume on Monday. But, Joe, that was a conversation that happened before jury deliberations started. Because this is a jury that is sequestered, I personally find it hard to believe that the judge would let them go home and then come back on Monday. We're still a couple of days away from that, so we'll still see what happens. By the way, I should mention there was a question that we got from the jury yesterday, just about 2 hours into deliberations. They were asking about some testimony from a psychologist and whether or not in the timing of an interview that Kim Potter did with that psychologist. The judge didn't really answer their question. It goes into some legal arguments, but that question that was being asked wasn't admitted into evidence. So the judge essentially said, you need to use your best recollection and send them back. So the jury deliberations are underway, and let's hope that they wrap up before Christmas.
All right. Sounds good. Shaquille Brewster, as always, thanks so much. Democrats on Capitol Hill are trying to figure out what comes next after Senator Joe Manchin left the future of the Build Back Better bill shrouded in uncertainty. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer told Senate Democrats a vote will go ahead next month despite Manchin's opposition. And yesterday, the White House attempted to diffuse tensions with Manchin and vowed to keep working on the bill.
They share fundamental values. They're longtime friends. That has not changed. And what's most on the president's mind is the risk of inaction. And if we do not act to get this legislation done and the components in it, not only will costs and prices go up for the American people, but also we will see a trajectory in economic growth that is not where we want it to be.
NBC News senior congressional correspondent Garrett Hake is with us now for more on this. So, Garrett, what would it take to get this bill passed next month? And do Democrats still think they can actually get it over the line despite this latest setback?
Joe, I don't think this bill is going to pass ever, and it certainly won't pass next month. But what we're hearing from Democrats is they want to continue pushing for at least some of the priorities in this bill, priorities that they know Joe Manchin supports. So the plan right now is something of a placeholder to keep fighting for these priorities and to project confidence. At least that's what Nancy Pelosi tried to do yesterday in California. Listen to this.
We will not let this opportunity pass, and we will make that case. And I have confidence that Senator Manchin cares about our country and that at some point, very soon, we can take up the legislation. I'm not deterred at all.
So, Joe, here's the thing. Speaker Pelosi is probably half right there. I don't think this piece of legislation will be what gets picked up. But Joe Manchin, who I've covered for years now, is not going to sit on the sidelines if there is a process to be done here to pass some of this stuff. He wants to be in the middle of every debate in Washington, including over this policy. So a hard no puts him out of the negotiation. It's not the place he wants to be. I think they pick up talks in some form come January.
I mean, yeah, we heard from Senator Manchin yesterday. He defended his opposition to the bill in a radio interview, appeared to hint that some specific reason may have pushed him to make those remarks on Fox News. What can you tell us about that?
Joe Manchin is the kind of politician who takes things personally. Sometimes that means he's passionate about what's going on and what he's working on. Sometimes it means he gets offended over the way some of these positions are handled. That certainly seemed to be the case in what he described as one of his reasons for finally pulling the trigger and coming out and saying he'd be a no on this when he was in that West Virginia radio show. Listen to what he said.
You know, basically, I'm always willing. You know me, always willing to work and listen and try. I just got to the wit's end, and they know the real reason what happened. They won't tell you, and I'm not going to because.
Wait. You said they know the real reason. They're not going to tell us. You're not going to tell us. What do you mean? What's the real?
Well, the bottom line is there's basically, and it's staff. It's staff driven. I understand staff. It's not the president. It's the staff. And they drove some things, and they put some things out that were absolutely inexcusable. And they know what it is, and that's it.
The put out some things that Manchin is referring to there appears to be a statement that the White House put out late last week saying that negotiations would continue into the new year between the president and Joe Manchin. Apparently, Manchin did not like being singled out in that way. Joe, as Senator McCain used to say, politics ain't beanbag.
Right. Before we let you go, Garrett, I have to ask you, the January 6th committee is putting the spotlight on a lawmaker for the first time, calling on Republican Congressman Scott Perry to provide information. Quickly, what's going on here?
This is going to be the start of a very sensitive period for the January 6th committee as they're trying to investigate the behavior of some of the own members of Congress. In this case, it's Scott Perry, Republican congressman from Pennsylvania. He's been linked to Jeffrey Clark, that DOJ official who was kind of scheming, if you will, behind the scenes on ways for the DOJ to get involved in election results. Perry and Clark are going to be subjects of this investigation going forward. Right now, it's just a letter asking Perry to come in and sit down and talk to the committee. No subpoena yet, but Joe, that could be the direction this is headed.
All right, Garrett, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Time for a check on your morning news now. Weather. Michelle Grossman is with us again. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. And we are officially at the first day of winter. So the shortest day of the year, we're going to start tacking on some daylight tomorrow. And it's certainly feeling like winter in some spots. But one spot in the southeast, we're going to be seeing some rain and the possibility of some severe weather. That's going to be your big weather story of the day. So radar showing us that we're seeing those heavy rains falling in Florida, into Georgia, also South Carolina, even up to Virginia today. So we do have a severe threat for 8 million at risk, where you see the yellow from Sarasota to Naples, West Palm Beach, even Miami in this. We are possibly and likely going to see winds gusting to 60 miles per hour, a few tornadoes possible, and even some hail up to an inch in some spots. So that's a big story we're going to watch today. We're going to watch this area of low pressure move quickly to the north and also to the east. So we're going to see that rain extending into Virginia, even to parts of the mid-Atlantic overnight. And then we could see it wrap up as some snow in parts of New England, especially in the state of Maine, as it quickly moves into Canada. So as we look at the snowfall totals, we're looking over a foot of snow in some spots, and that's in the northern parts of Maine. So we are also looking at winter weather in the west. So we've had a series of storms. It seems like all of December, we've just had storm after storm in the northwest. And we're going to see that once again today with winter alerts. You can see warnings, watches, advisories, and all these colors from Washington down to California. And that's going to be the story today. We're going to continue to see these storms moving onshore, bringing rain and also some mountain snow, even up to a foot in some spots. And that's good news for the skiers, but it's going to make for tricky travel. So then tomorrow, additional rounds of snow and rain, flooding possible near those scar areas where we saw those wildfires over the summer. Thursday, another cold front's going to move through. That's going to make for difficult travel, heavy snow in the mountains as well. And we're going to see those rainfall totals up to 3 inches in spot, Joe, in parts of California. So when I see you next hour, we're going to talk about the holiday travel forecast. It's looking good for many of us, and then also some winter-like weather in some spots.
All right, looking forward to that. Thanks so much, Michelle.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.